very, very interesting topic today. And we have about a century's worth of collective experience on this stage when it comes to investing and also clean tech. Since we're talking about trillions of dollars, perhaps I can give you a little bit of context about climate change and the kind of climate financing it needs. So we're looking at an extra annual spending of about 500 billion US dollars in low income countries, about 2.1 trillion US dollars in emerging market economies. And that's the money that's required just till 2030 if we are to meet all sustainable development goals. Now, this is not really going to come only from multilateral development banks or development institutions. They account for just 5%. Governments cannot bridge the gap. Hence, these are the people who are really important, right? And it's an area with enormous potential for creating environment impact and also has immense economic viability. So let's start with Nicholas Parker from Clean AI. And Nick is someone who actually coined the term clean tech many decades ago. So what's changed, Nick, since then? Because that was a time when people were very wary of the term clean tech or investing in climate strategies. Climate any kind of climate investment. But we're at a stage now where it's the it thing to get into.
Great to be here. Yes, we've come a long way since I bought the domain name cleantech.com from a dry cleaner in Iowa. When we started in 2000, there was about $1 billion going into clean tech, venture capital, growth capital. Then 2010, it rose to about 10 billion. And today we're at about 30, 40 billion a year. I think solar is the best proxy indicator of how far we've come. Solar costs have come down 200x in the last 20 odd years. And the market has increased 50x in the last 5 years. And so we're kind of seeing a Moore's law of technology change. And then you couple that with radically improved entrepreneurship and talent.
Yeah.
Operating hours, learn by doing, public policy, which is really not revealed yet in terms of regulation, but more in terms of public capital that's come into this. So we still don't have a price on carbon that matters. We have lots of money like the Inflation Reduction Act. So a great deal has changed, but a great deal remains to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Stefan, if I can bring you in, you're with Indigo Capital Partners. And again, you've been in this space for a really long time. Are investors encouraged today? Because earlier technologies like EVs, batteries, they've given them good returns.
Yes, I mean, for sure, I think now we can say safely that the clean tech revolution has finally came to fruition, and it's a good idea and it's a good business. There's a number of forces that make it that way. I think there's not only a regulatory framework globally that makes it, interesting to invest in cleaner technologies, in science and climate tech, but also I think there is an added conscious from consumers, corporations, and investors alike, where we all try to work together to find investments which are not only good financially, but also good in terms of KPIs and metrics that contribute to the famous ESG or SDG and so on and so forth. So there's a good number of frameworks that guide our investment and where we can sort of benchmark against those targets set by international institutions. But there is also pressure from the investors into the funds for that to happen. So I think it's a perfect storm in a good way.
Yeah.
To make investors look at this space. And you see, increasingly amount of billions of dollars targeting climate tech.
Yeah, and I think some encouragement to get into riskier sides of clean tech, which is something that Jeff does at 7% Ventures. And, their website says they're looking for moonshots. So really early stage and really advanced technologies. But how do you decide that something's going to go for the moon and not crash back on Earth? How do you pick?
That's a great question. I mean, like a lot of other investors, there's a host of factors that we scrutinize to make that determination. We'll talk to experts, players in the industry, and whatnot, and it's sort of a confluence of all of those. how long do we wait? Well, a lot of times funds are bound by the lifetime of the fund itself.
Mhm.
So we're trying to target companies that will exit within 5 to 7 years. So we kind of already know that going into an investment, and that's sort of how we goal seek.
Okay. Amal is from 500 Global, and she's been working with entrepreneurs in Africa, Egypt, also in Southeast Asia. Do you find that they now have access to patient capital?
I think it's changed a lot over the last 15 years. So in the beginning, there was a shortage on both ends, the capital and the entrepreneurs. And I think obviously it is a signaling effect. You know, when you have more capital, you'll likely get more entrepreneurs. But there's more than just capital to encourage entrepreneurship. You want to encourage a risk-taking environment. There has to be more conducive environment for entrepreneurs to take risks and operate and build businesses. So all of these things together have been changing in emerging markets, and we're finding that capital has followed the enhanced regulations, the more conducive environments that has been created in many markets around the world, whether in Africa or also in Southeast Asia and Latin America. And so capital has slowly followed that. I don't think we're at a magnitude where we can say it's equal to what you find in the Valley or even in Europe, but definitely there's more access now for entrepreneurs to patient capital. We think there more is needed, but for where the ecosystems have come and where the markets have come, it's definitely much more encouraging than it was 10, 15 years ago. And I think the next 10 years will be even more revolutionary in terms of, like, we are now seeing that solutions need to come from the global south. They need to come from emerging markets who are now accounting to more than 50% of the future markets that we're going to be operating in.
Yeah, so you've kind of led into my next question, which I was about to ask you, which is that if it's $1 trillion opportunity, how much of it is coming from the global south? If you can, continue with that thought.
Particularly when it comes to climate, it's not a local solution, right? It is a global problem, and so we're going to find solutions coming from different parts of the world. It's no longer just going to be, bracketed into just Silicon Valley dictating how the world gets shaped, because increasingly this is a problem, this is a challenge, it's affecting the whole world, and the new markets like India are big contributors to how we solve for this for this problem. So I think the global south will be playing an increasingly important and significant role, whether it comes to adaptation or mitigation solutions, because you really need the buy-in of both the consumers, the investors, and the entrepreneurs to solve together. It is not going to be one part of the globe, and it's not going to be a bipolar world where these are the only centers for solutions. The global south will be playing a very important role in shaping that trajectory.
Yeah. So, Nick, I think she's, put in beautiful context there. But a lot of climate change or adaptation or mitigation businesses are solving local problems. What is the mindset of VCs like you about that?
In terms of solving local problems.
Local problems related to climate change. Some areas may be more prone to flooding, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, I think often the solutions are not in the same places as the problems. And one of the challenges that Silicon Valley faces, that groups like yours are attempting to solve, is how do you go cross-border?
Yeah.
And I think particularly this is going to happen south-south now more than, and maybe even south-north. So I think venture capital is not purpose-built for this challenge in multiple different ways, but particularly this one. And I think the innovation around solving that is going to come from the global south. And hopefully we'll borrow and use it in the global north.
Stephan, you want to add to that?
Yes, I mean, I experienced firsthand, for example, like the country where I came from 10 years ago, Portugal, was not a tech center, and nowadays is a relatively well-known sort of tech hub in Europe, delivering unicorns to the world. So for sure, great solutions, global solutions can come from anywhere. Intelligence is distributed evenly across the world. Now, what is not distributed across the world are two things: deep tech research centers and super high-end universities. So I think there is work to be done in many countries in sort of strengthening the quality of base science research and deep tech, because if you don't have truly deep tech, it's extremely difficult to solve climate issues. So climate is solved based on not just regular software as a service, It's solved based on super deep science, and so you need to have the backbone of great universities and research centers across the globe to do that. And I think in many countries and in many regions of the world, you still have to step up. And the thing that is most unequal is capital, right? So you might have incredible ideas, incredible entrepreneurs, and even incredible science, but if you don't have the money, you just can't make it global, right?
Yeah.
So I think events like this and institutions that back these events and many others need to step up the capital. We had an announcement yesterday here about a $1 billion fund of funds and for other things. I think you need the capital to make it happen, because it is nice to say, the solutions will come from not Silicon Valley or not the United States or not China, but that's where the money is. So, we need to have money elsewhere. Otherwise, there won't be any solutions coming out of these great places which are not Silicon Valley. So you also need to work not only on empowering the entrepreneurs, but you need to empower scientists, you need to empower research, and you need to have local venture capital, regional venture capital, and then global venture capital, because you can't also expect for the big global VCs to go and find the solution to climate tech, I don't know, in sub-Saharan Africa if they're not there, right? So you need local venture capital to be developed in these countries so that they can back those first ideas and then step them up to the global level.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And Jeff, so if you sort of take that forward, what role do you think governments play when it comes to regulation?
Um, I mean, governments play a huge role today in climate tech. In terms of regulation, I mean, they're often preventing us from making big mistakes, doing things like polluting waterways from manufacturing batteries or something like that. So I think in a lot of ways, it's just to sort of protect ourselves from ourselves. In terms of government support and regulation, I think we should continue to see that well into the future. I mean, without investing in it, it won't come to fruition otherwise.
Okay. Amal, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about some of the more exciting clean tech startups that you've been working with.
I continue to be like truly, truly fascinated and inspired by some of the climate tech solutions that we're seeing coming out, particularly when it comes to agriculture and food security, because I think obviously in the global south this is only a growing and pressing problem. So seeing things on protein alternatives, alternative sourcing, supply chain solutions, and it doesn't stop at any part of the value chain. I think everything is lends itself to the possibility of rethinking how we do things, including how we eat and how we consume. And so these solutions are really inspiring. And I think what makes it very special is that as in some of the previous panels as mentioned, we're experiencing a lot of volatility and uncertainty, especially in emerging markets. I mean, I come from Egypt. We've been through a lot of macroeconomic challenges this year, and they forced founders to rethink how we do things, and that came particularly in supply chain, where how do we source more sustainably? It was because of financial problems, but it really enforced or encouraged an accelerated shift to more sustainable solutions that are that are leading towards net zero. So I think all of these challenges that we're experiencing globally, I know it is tough and heartbreaking to go through, but the silver lining is that we're seeing more profitable businesses emerging and more financially sustainable businesses and more businesses that are environmentally sustainable. And the other sector that I particularly get more excited about is also in transportation and seeing more, whether it's in electric vehicles or more shared rides and more solutions that really improve the traffic, which is obviously a growing problem in the global south, but also I see more even in cooling solutions. Our countries are getting hotter and hotter every year. The middle class is growing. There's more demand for ACs, and how do we make that more efficient, the cooling solution? So I think in every vertical, it is really meeting the population where it is more sustainably.
All right. So, Nick, you're someone who's really been championing the use of AI in clean tech. When we think of AI, most of us would probably be thinking of generative AI. Is that the way that AI is being used in clean tech also, making data smarter, or have founders gone beyond?
I'm hugely excited about this. We need to be able to bend the curve. We're falling behind where public commitments. We're not getting where we need to go, as was just shared. AI is sort of a new kid on the block that can really change what's going on. Our own analysis and analysis by others suggests that AI can take care of at least 10% of global emissions in the next decade. And we've just done a baseline study that has shown over 30 billion in venture capital or growth capital has come into what we call clean AI startups. And 70% of that is early stage. So there's going to be huge opportunity for follow-on financing. But what are these startups really doing? First of all, most of them, the largest percentage of them are focused on agriculture right now, because all the things that we've just been discussing. But the opportunities for materials and catalyst discovery and protein discovery, for optimizing, for designing, for transparency in what people are doing is massive. So we think AI is going to be a huge force multiplier and will help us bend the curve on this epic challenge. But if I may say one thing in response to your questions about the Global South, I think what we're seeing, the difference between the North and the South, is that price signals, raw price signals and resiliency factors are more important than they are in the West or the North. We're more concerned about the price of gasoline, and yet the price of water is higher in the Global South. So AI is going to help us come to understand how to be much more efficient in using resources, and ultimately how to substitute for things that are not sustainable in the longer term. So I'm really excited about this, and I think parts of the world like Qatar and this region writ large are not too late to that party and can actually leapfrog and lead.
Absolutely. Stephan, the use of AI, like Nick was saying, can help us bend the curve. In the blue economy, which is where you work extensively, are you seeing applications there as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the oceans, as we know, are an integral part and a key part in the climate change phenomenon. And climate tech is increasingly worried with delivering solutions that improve the state of the oceans. And there we are seeing many companies integrate AI, particularly through software solutions integrated with hardware, which is sometimes a bit different than the regular tech where there's only software. So you're seeing the integration of IoT with, for example, satellite data and inferring what's going to happen in a specific setting, in a specific scenario. So AI is absolutely critical in that. There's more and more teams dedicating themselves to tackling challenges that relate to AI that have a direct or indirect impact in the ocean. For example, one of the Portuguese companies that is working on using AI and computer vision in the textiles industry, actually with implementation all over the world, those sort of textiles that are not wasted mean that there's no water that is wasted, means that there's no extra chemicals that are used, and that has an impact in the waterways and in the ocean. So there's direct, indirect ways of using AI and the combination of hardware and software to solve these issues. And oceans are a big part. There's not that many ocean funds yet out there. I think there's only half a dozen or so in Europe and a few others in the US. And I see here in the region more and more interest in ocean-related also investing.
Yeah, that's a huge opportunity. And the other space, Jeff, that's very exciting for a lot of people is space tech and defense. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times technology's adoption started early on in space and defense. And what I mean by that is, more than a decade ago, when we saw the emergence of lithium-ion batteries, those early adopters were often people building model planes and drones. And those advancements are enabling, defense today, a lot of times using drones. And then similarly, within space, as you touched on, we are putting up satellites that can image in many different bands, and we can pull intelligence at a global scale now, which is really important to think more holistically about these issues.
Okay, perfect. I think we have to wrap up soon. So I think my last question to all of you would be your advice that you'd like to give to clean tech entrepreneurs looking to attract investment. Nick, let's start with you.
I would say don't depend on government regulations or handouts. Try and respond to markets and real pain points. There's too many solutions to problems that people don't yet want to solve. So focus on markets. And if governments are supportive, that's terrific, but that's secondary.
Amal.
I would say play the long game. This is not a win you'll make in 3 days or 3 years. This everyone is in it for the longer haul. Governments, investors. I think we are all aware of the risk that this entails, and you have to think long term and play the longer game.
Jen.
Yeah, I think a lot of times I'll meet with teams that still have a lot of science risk in their technology. And a lot of times investors don't want to fund a company that has a lot of science risk. They'd rather look at engineering risk, so deployment of this technology. So I would recommend that entrepreneurs and founders don't go to investors until they've retired the science risk.
All right, Stephan.
Yes, complementing to what has been said, my advice would be think globally, because globally means thinking of a big problem. And VCs, they want to bet in things that go huge, so that they can get adequate returns, taking into account the risk that is having an early stage portfolio comes with. So I think in many regions of the world, what we see, contrary to say Silicon Valley or in Europe, is people thinking about local solutions or regional solutions. And sometimes that solution with a little bit of a change can become a global solution. And the second thing would be, get the highest quality capital possible. I wouldn't say avoid the state, but, just try to get really high quality private capital locally that can put you in touch with private capital globally. And so the quality of the capital is many times as important as the quality of the solution itself, because you don't have the right bridges to go global. You might just stay small or never make it. So think globally, both in terms of product and in terms of capital.
All right, thank you. I think that's a great note to wrap up on. Thank you all for your insights. And I think we're going away with a lot to think about. So thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.